We're on pace to book 12,000 meetings this year currently for our clients. We just had one client kick off in their first 90 days of their partnership with us, and they've already closed one deal that's 7 figures using email only. And the biggest myth is that sending email is easy. If you look at shooting a basketball, for instance, as an analogy, you can go out today, buy a basketball and an email account and be in the email sending business, right? You can be in the basketball business. You could call yourself a basketball player today. But the greatest basketball players like LeBron James and Steph Curry are not going to lose sleep tonight.
My name's Mike Lander, and you're listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast, where we bring you actionable insights about sales RFPs, negotiations, and difficult procurement discussions from sales leaders, brand leaders, and procurement leaders. Please subscribe to get updates when new episodes are released. Derek, thanks ever so much for joining us on Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast.
Mike, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm looking forward to this. This is really, for the audience listening, if you're even vaguely intrigued about AI and sales and that overlap, Derek's your man, that's for sure. So, Derek, just tell the audience.
I think it's the most exciting time for salespeople, at least they should be, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
How AI is going to make our lives better.
So, Derek, just tell the audience, who are you? What do you do? And then something unusual about yourself.
Sure. My name is Derek Ray. I founded a company called Demand Inc. About 7 years ago, and we do AI-enabled sales development as a service. So this fully, white glove managed service that we do for our clients. We support 60 professional sports teams, some of the top leagues in terms of for racing and stick and ball sports. And we also support some of the top startups, including some of the most recognized companies that you'll see from an enterprise tech perspective, like Uber, AWS, Google, et cetera, Hewlett Packard. So we support 200 plus startups, big companies, lots of sports teams. That's with Demand Inc. And I have a new company that I've started called Lasso, which is Lasso AI. And it's essentially artificial intelligence for salespeople to find contacts that they're missing. So it's kind of solves the age-old phone book issue that we all had, if you're old enough, in terms of cognitively knowing who you have contacted or haven't, who you missed, what accounts, etc. We'll get into that in a second. But I think the unique thing about me versus what I see versus most salespeople is I started off as a designer, and I saw, my sales team was the deck that they were presenting was something that wasn't in line with the product in terms of my opinion. So I said, hey, why don't we pique interest and lead off with this slide, which is our, AHA feature functionality that our clients love. Why don't we just start the presentation there? And so that was 20 years ago. And ultimately what I see myself now as is really a storyteller.
Right.
And because we do top of funnel sales development and we're booking meetings, it's about, piquing interest, getting people's attention and doing a good job in terms of cold email outreach, which is really hard these days. But we've booked over 100,000 meetings. We've driven $7 billion in client pipeline.
How many meetings?
100,000 meetings, $7 billion in client pipeline one. And we work on a lot of products that are, large order, of magnitude. So 6 figure, 7 figure. But we also have, I'd say the majority of our clients have a average contract value starting, maybe 25K and above.
Yeah.
So not far off from most B2B SaaS products from an enterprise perspective. And what we've been doing in the last 7 years is effectively accelerating top of the funnel for these companies.
Very good. Derek, this will be fascinating. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first kind of question we thought we'd talk about, there'll be some rabbit holes that we go down, I'm sure. But over the last 12 months, what's been happening to conversion rates for kind of sales development reps, people working at top of funnel? Why has that been happening? And what should sales teams be doing about it?
Yeah, so legacy process and systems that sales development teams are using, we're seeing anywhere between a 30 to 40% drop in productivity, meaning that there's this diminishing return in terms of doing what worked in the past is now producing 30 to 40% less results.
Wow.
And so teams are struggling. And there's a lot that goes into that. You have the rise of AI. You also have economically a lot of in the startup category, we see a lot of companies nearing the end of their runway from a capital perspective.
Yep.
And the 2023 40% less capital going into startups is becoming, it's starting to show kind of rear its ugly head in terms of what that means for companies. They've been trying to camel or go as far as they can with as few resources as possible, but you're seeing, budgets tightening and companies are taking less meetings, at least in the startup category.
Yeah.
At the same time, we see the rise of AI. We see the rise of personalization. We see the rise of being able to be quicker and more efficient at creating contact lists. And so we aren't in the 30 or 40% category diminishing whatsoever. My company, at least, and our clients, we're still I believe we've caught the first wave of AI and we're deploying it in an operational way that's driving benefit for our clients. But we're picking up a lot of new clients that are telling me exactly what I'm telling you in terms of,
right.
Until 2023, this playbook worked, and now it's not. How can you help? And that's where AI can come in and I think help everybody.
And what's the biggest thing, Derek? So if you look at how traditional kind of top of funnel SDRs would work in terms of sales outreach, the traditional model of they go off and find 500 emails and they'd be looking on LinkedIn and they'd be contacting people, and what's not working anymore in that more traditional model? What's the biggest thing that's not working?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's multiple variables here. One, it's becoming more and more difficult to reach the inbox, period.
Right.
Some of that's because of Google tightening their spam and deliverability requirements for email. And so anyone that's listening to this right now and they're just sending a lot of cold email using Gmail, they know what a deactivation is. They know how deactivations change, how Google's actually shutting down your account now and forcing you to appeal to have it reinstated. And so the art and science of getting to the inbox has changed. Some of it's because of the proliferation of data, contact data.
Yep.
And vendor noise. And it's really inexpensive to get a tool that can automatically blast out email that has basic mail merge personalizations like hi, first name, seeing you do this type of, strategy. So that noise is not beneficial to anyone. And I do think that there's just a volumetric increase of outbound that's happening.
Yep.
Text message has proven to be a channel that's inefficient for cold, right? Phone is also something that during the pandemic, people stopped picking up their phone because now they're no longer at their desk. They're working from home. And so you have, and an SMS thankfully requires opt-in, right? So, or someone just hits stop and you're no longer going to follow up with them.
Yep.
So now all eyes have focused on email. And so the deliverability challenges in terms of getting in the inbox, and if you look at 80% of Series A companies right now that take funding, and you look at their domain, it's not configured appropriately to send email.
Really?
So, yes. And so when you look
so it's not DMARC authenticated?
It's not DMARC authenticated, and you need to have at least SPF or DKIM on the domain.
That's right. Yeah.
To be able for the DMARC to work. So you can prove.
I mean, even I know that, Derek. And I'm in my kind of room in the Cotswolds, and even I know that.
Well, the Series A backed companies don't, and that just goes to show that no one really knows what email is. The barrier to enter to get an email account is so low that no one actually thinks about what's happening technically behind the scenes to send emails, and that knowledge is really important now. I mean, everyone that's using Gmail should have SPF or DKIM on their domain as an email policy with DMARC as a reporting and enforcement mechanism. But you'd be surprised. Most people don't know how to send email from a technical perspective. And then when you actually get to the content itself, I mean, we are terrible at sending email. Humans are. And it's because we're educated incorrectly in terms of how to communicate to each other. When you think about the education you go through in terms of how to communicate to other humans, you think about writing, an introductory paragraph, 3 supportive and a conclusion, right? Versus how you communicate using your phone. How do you naturally communicate to other humans, your friends, people you just met?
Yep.
When you look at the difference in communication, it couldn't be more vast.
Correct.
Right? When you look at broken grammar incredibly concise emojis, natural human communication versus what we do in email. It's like something changes when we get behind the wheel of the email machine, and we become myopic, and we become verbose, and and we think that people care about a founder bio or background, and how much money this is going to save you. So I think that there's a lot of variables that
just
go.
interesting, Derek. So this morning I went for breakfast with my wife, which we rarely do because we both work for ourselves, and we went to the cafe and met some people we didn't know. So on that point, the first thing I didn't do was go, "Hi, my name's Mike. What I do is I help people convert more RFPs in a more efficient way. We should have a conversation. What do you think?" Because that would be complete and utter BS. You wouldn't
That's
do it,
right.
would you? You just wouldn't do it. You say, "Hi, my name's Mike. I live around the corner. Where do you live?" Nice
That's
to
right.
see you.
And that natural form of human communication that actually works, like how we communicate in
how you relate
anywhere in the world. Exactly. And you can apply this to online dating as well. So if you look at how you're behaving in cold email outreach as a salesperson, and if you were to just flip the context and pretend this was an online dating scenario, would you ever propose someone to meet for 15 or 20 minutes on Thursday? It's something that like you wouldn't devalue yourself like that. You just say like, hey, could we go on a date sometime? Or you would have like, we should find a time to grab a coffee. You're not going to put these transactional signals into a message. And so when you look at cold email, you look at, or just email in general, from a technical perspective, we have no clue what we're doing. This is agnostically as sales folks. We also don't know how to write cold email that is human, that is natural, that is really written for them. We've spent the last 2 decades writing for ourselves, being myopic. Talking about product names, for instance, like anyone that you meet on the street, for instance, in a cafe, and no one's going to care about your product.
No,
right?
Correct.
Same is true in cold sales email. There's things that people do care about, but they care more. They care more about themselves and their role, right, in their company than they care about yours. And I think that's where AI steps in, and it can help us tremendously.
I think, Derek, it is a very interesting thread to go down, because I was taught when I was selling years and years and years ago back at KPMG, humans buy from humans. So if they're a chief exec of a big company, or be they the sales director of a startup, it's the same thing. They are going to buy from humans. Now, there's lots of nuance. So in a global, Fortune 100 company, sure, there's lots more diligence. There's all sorts of hoops to jump through. There's lots more to the sales cycle. But the basic premise is the same. If you're selling professional services, then you have to be personable. You have to be relatable. You have to find something in common. Like at the beginning, the first thing you pointed out was, obviously this is audio only, but I've got a DeLorean Lego in my background. What's the first thing you did? Love your DeLorean. Very cool. Because you're relating. But we don't do that with people that we don't know on email, do we?
Well, it's interesting because the people sell the people premise, I believe, becomes even more powerful and true in an AI world.
Right.
Where you can't tell the difference between the deep fake.
Yes.
Right? Where we're going to become less trusting of everything we receive. Like, is this true? Right? The human to human connection is incredibly powerful. And we learned about this in the pandemic. Like, how powerful is this?
Yes.
Right? And we could see that, and even to this day, any of our clients that are going on road shows, going to conferences, they're flying on a plane to meet someone in person, or they're going to be in market. The amount of meetings that we book for those folks is tremendous.
Right.
It's off the charts. This is pre-pandemic. It's like, even where we are now in 2024, humans are very much interested in connecting with each other in person.
They are, definitely.
And I think part of it's because of the disingenuous inbox situation that's happening now. But we do have to compartmentalize that the meeting itself is an outcome that we want to get to, right? And or if as most salespeople will say, getting the meeting is the hardest part. right? And so getting you in the room or the person in the room or the people in the room to have a conversation, to build a personal relationship, that is a milestone, that is a goal
Yep.
of another process, right? And that's the top of funnel sales development process, which doesn't need to be equals networking, right? It doesn't need to be Derek or Mike reaching out to a prospect and having like, hey, I'm giving all these equals networking cues based on who you are, who you follow on LinkedIn. I saw you did this. It could be an appointment setter, right?
Yep.
It could be someone reaching out saying, I'd love to connect you with Mike on my team for these reasons. And this is why we think it'd be interesting for you to learn about what we're doing because we see what you're doing, right?
Yep.
And so being genuine in the top of the funnel, asynchronous before you've had a conversation with someone is a really interesting continuum, because now for the first time, AI is going so personalized that you're receiving these emails. Like someone wrote me an email last week that said, hey, seeing that you're in San Francisco, right? You guys have so much fog that you actually named it Carl. Carl, that's interesting. And it's actually not the reason why we named it Carl, and it's not what Carl is.
Right.
And I'm not in San Francisco anymore.
Apart from that, it was genius.
Apart from that, it's like a good attempt at, and then the message goes on and talks about all these things in my past, like any of that's relevant to now. And then it'll eventually get to, because you're a startup founder, we should chat, which is like, it's like a waste of time. And of course I didn't actually open it. I scanned it from my phone, in a preview mode, and kind of just laughed at, like, look how bad this is. I don't even know who they are. I don't know why I would respond to this email. None of this is true. And so the disingenuous AI personalization is coming, right?
Yeah.
And so we see, and in the past, I believe that what we were doing from a mail merge perspective, like finding things that are identifiable to them, past companies, current role, they did this for previous company, like that was a good practice. But now what's going to happen is we're in the phase of more personalization, probably too much personalization, and the diminishing return on that personalization is already taking place.
Yeah.
The law of diminishing return on personalization is already happening in terms of, and I do believe that it's going to create disingenuous outreach, and it's going to bring us to messaging that's more concise, more transactional, has a why you why now component, but you don't need to go into the, hey, saw the recent, bikini photos of you and your spouse on Instagram, look like a great vacation, right? When we can make it more about business, about job function. We can make it more around what's happening with the business, recent news, their role specific. So I do think we're entering a new phase, which is going to be a short-lived one. And keep in mind, in sales development or even in sales, we have gone through wave after wave after wave after wave of these pattern interruption phases, right? When there was a phase of, create a recording of someone's website, show how smart you are.
I remember that.
Send it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gone now.
That seems to have gone. Exactly. Correct.
Exactly. Look how few emails you receive with GIFs in them now.
Yep.
Why? And you just kind of go back in time and you can see that there's these pattern interruptions that happened, which are like these, it's kind of like, it ultimately gets all the way back to the HTML blink command, right? Of like, I've received my first blinking email, right? I never need to receive that one again.
Yep, exactly.
And so that was a flash in the pan pattern interrupter. So you have these pattern interruptions that have always happened, and it's, they're meant to pique interest or
did you ever get the email with like there'd be someone's face embedded in the email and they'd be waving at you saying, "Hi, Mike." And the first one I got, I was like, wow, that's clever. Didn't reply to the guy. But the next 20 I got, I deleted every single one really quickly.
Yeah.
Because it's just nonsense.
So now we're entering the nonsense of AI generated personalization. And again, it's not like who's to blame, who's the fault. I don't know if we need to go pointing fingers, because if you give humans an email account and say go write cold emails, they're going to be equally terrible.
Yep.
In terms of based on how we're trained. And so I do believe that we'll be able to train AI quicker. We'll also have better machine learning to know what works, what doesn't. The law of diminishing returns on personalization. How much personalization do you need in this new kind of future of communicating with humans?
Yep.
TBD. We're seeing between 18 and 21% of personalization in the top of the message is kind of optimal right now. So that means that the first 7 to 10 words, it's incredibly important to show that writing to someone and you know who they are,
Right.
right? Or you're actually using, in anyone that's done cold calling and they use the the playbook of the reason for my call is, right, when you start off a cold call.
Yeah.
When you add personalization and the reason for your email in the very top right now in this moment in time, we see that as incredibly effective. And that's where, but the question of where do we go from here is unknown, right? How much AI, verbose, Hemingway emails are we going to see, right?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
And then after this curve is over, where do we end up? And we have some hypothesis in terms of what we think will happen with email in the next year or so. But 2 years from now, we're going to be emailing completely different.
So, Derek, let's address a myth or a reality kind of like head on. So I work with a lot of commercial people, salespeople, biz dev, whatever you want to call them, chief commercial officers. There is a perception that cold email is dead. Cold outreach is dead. It doesn't work. So is that a myth or is that a reality?
That's a myth.
I knew you'd say that. So, Derek, why is it a myth? Because it's important. Because people say, "Oh, cold email's irrelevant to me. It doesn't work." There are alternative strategies, as we know, which are valid, and I use, I use alternative strategies on LinkedIn of building relationships over a very long period, and eventually good things happen. It's a very slow burn, and people say that, and therefore, cold outreach just doesn't work. So why is it a myth that cold outreach is dead?
Well, we're on pace to book 12,000 meetings this year currently for our clients. We just had one client kick off in their first 90 days of their partnership with us, and they've already closed one deal that's 7 figures, closed one using email only.
Right.
And email, the biggest myth is that sending email is easy. That's the myth. And if you look at shooting a basketball, for instance, as an analogy, right? A basketball costs you $10. So does a Gmail account. You can go out today, buy a basketball and an email account and be in the email sending business, right? You can be in the basketball business. You could call yourself a basketball player today,
right,
if you wanted to. But the greatest basketball players like LeBron James and Steph Curry are not going to lose sleep tonight.
No.
Right?
Because Mike's now got a basketball. We should be concerned.
Yeah, Mike's shooting threes, right? That's the myth.
Mike got one through the hoop. Now we're really worried. Now I'm concerned. Mike's only 5'7", but he could be a player. Yeah. You never know.
Yeah. So when you look at shooting hoops, sending emails, even, it's analogous of many things that are difficult to do. Playing chess, right? Yeah. There's the 10,000 hour rule of being great at anything, right? Yeah. And in sending email, let's just face it, there's not a lot of people around that know how to send good cold email, right? So it's absolutely a myth. And the reason why the shots aren't falling is because you need more practice and you need a better technique and you need strategy and you need to work at it every single day. Right. And you look around at people and look at our approach to sales development historically. And I mean this is all salespeople, all sales orgs. It's top of the funnel, bottom of the food chain from an org chart perspective. Right. You hire people out of college to do dial for dollars. You hire these sales development folks that are taking a temporary job. It's a stepping stone to something else. And then you're wondering, why isn't this channel working for us anymore? Yeah. Right. And so it's an absolute myth. And there's a craft here that people do not embrace. And it's art and science. Yeah. And then it also has the most complexities of anything that we do in sales, right? When you look at the amount of complexity on the object of account and company data versus contact data, I mean, it is incredibly complex what is out there. And we just buy these digital phone books and affect people and effectively think that what we did in the past will produce the same results, this year as it did in decades past by, working through the phone book. And it's just not true.
Because so things like, for example, Derek, if I take a very specific example of that kind of cold email, if someone buys a database of opted-in emails, if they are opted in, of 100,000 contacts that's in their relevant sector, and then they apply a template and they do some personalization and they do what they can, that approach has got a very, very, very low response rate, an unbelievably low response rate. But you're not advocating that. You're not saying just buy a database and just be better at humanizing it. There's something else behind what you're saying, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That, and by the way, there's no such thing as a buying an opt-in database, but
isn't there?
No, nobody. Maybe in like the dark web.
I've never been asked to opt in to an email, but I get thousands from people I don't know.
Yeah,
so it is a bit weird.
So, yeah, and theoretically, you can opt out on every single email. You should be able to do it in an unsubscribe link, and depending on where you live, like if you're in Europe, you can't even ask what information do you have on me and how'd you get it?
Correct.
In
GDPR, correct.
Or the UK's equivalent of it. And they have to provide it for you. So there's a lot of regulations, and there's more regulations coming for email. I mean, email is going to become more and more regulated because of the amount of spamming that takes place. This buy a list, spray and pray. Hopefully someone responds. Hopefully it makes it into the email address.
I'm getting literally now, I'm getting on my own, I get well over 50 a day. Well over 50 a day now.
And how obvious is it when they come into your inbox?
Completely obvious.
Completely obvious.
Like it takes me a second because it's just to be able to click the mouse to delete it.
Yep. And so the pattern interruption now that you can create that's actually, swimming against grain, doing the opposite what everyone else is doing, is to be human, right? And you can use AI to help you in terms of learning about Mike.
Yep.
And how can I take those learnings and write Mike a better email?
Yeah.
And I always coach people that if you want to learn how to, write great email, just start sending one email at a time, right?
Yeah.
Look at Mike's profile, right?
Yeah,
and if he matches your ICP, right? If he matches your ICP, if you're targeting Mike's company and he's the person you want to speak to, explain why.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Mike, I see this about you. So it's this why you, why now. This is what I do with some social proof, street credibility, whatever it might be, reasons why you can trust me. Here's the conversation I'd like to have. So you're setting an agenda. You're reaching out with why you, why now, right? So you see it and it's like, oh, how, like of these 50 emails that I received today, one person took the time to actually be thoughtful and say something that's relevant to me and pique my interest because that's something that I might need. That's a conversation I want to have, whatever it might be. And it could be around, seeing your activity, seeing your recent posts, seeing that you've been doing this for X amount of time, seeing, there's so many things that you can use.
That's right.
For personalization. Now, doing that manually, whenever you do that process, you start developing a system, right? Because you can start grouping certain types of folks that are more like Mike. Oh, Mike owns an agency. Mike has this background.
Yeah.
I'm looking for people that specialize in helping companies do better at responding to RFPs.
Exactly.
Right? So now having contextual segmentation in terms of a group that you're engaged with personalized email, you're getting a step further. And ultimately what you're doing is, when you think about a target, there's a bullseye, right? There's a second concentric ring and a third. And if you're prioritizing your ICP, if you're prioritizing who you're reaching out to, it's much easier to segment and then create messaging that's personalized at scale by going group at a time, not a one size fits all, right? Oh, here's a whole target. Let's just blast them with this template. Terrible.
That's never going to work. Yeah.
It used to, I think, because like that's why everyone still does it. But what's changing is that we can use AI to help us personalize.
Yeah.
And be and not in terms of being disingenuous, to actually be genuine. It's like, hey, Mike, I see this about you and you've been doing this. Like, we should chat because I do this. So doing the research for us, scraping, consolidating, articulating, areas of expertise, decision makers, whatever it might be. I think that's where AI is really, at least creating the differentiation for us currently to allow us to be more personalized at scale, be more human.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that we have to use machines to do that.
It is. So, a couple of things.
Yep.
we're only around the corner, I think, literally within the next probably 6 months, I'd have thought. And I have no idea whether this is true or not. It's my speculation. But I've now got Copilot, Microsoft's Copilot, on my desktop. I would imagine quite soon there will be an AI LLM sat in my email within my Office 365 that I can guide to what kind of emails I want to see and what kind of sequence. So that if I get one from Derek, I know Derek, and if he's emailed me, might be about the podcast recording we're doing. That's quite important. We're doing it today, so that'll come at the top of my inbox. Whereas something that it's from someone that we've never heard of, there's no reference in my previous sent history, and it looks like a template, I don't even need to see it. It will just disappear. And that, I would only imagine, can only be around the corner. Do you think that's true or not?
Oh, yeah, it's 100% here. I mean, if you go and look at if you're using Gmail, just go to promotions folder. It's already happening.
Okay.
Right? There's already a dedicated place for those templated emails. Right? And it's either promotions folder or spam.
Yeah.
And the inbox, thankfully, is becoming more regulated. It's going to become more difficult to go out and buy that basketball and shoot hoops and have it actually go in.
Yeah.
Right. Or at least using email. But that constraint is a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is as well.
Yeah, it's a forcing function, right? Imagine, and I guess the better analogy would be, a basketball hoop historically or the rim itself has been the size of a swimming pool. And so people can just throw the ball up in the air and it goes in. They're, oh, look how great I am at sending email. Look at all these meetings and let's throw more balls in the air. But now the hoop is 10 feet in the air.
Yeah.
You got to stand 15 feet back, and you actually have to have a craft and technique. And so regulation is good in my opinion. And I want to receive less of those templated emails and emails that are more written for me.
Yeah.
And ultimately the difference is going to be the separation between winning and losing is going to be people that are able to be human at scale and write personalization at scale. And in the next year or so, all of that should be, in terms of the way things are progressing now. We've already built our own language model. We started on GPT, switched to our own language model, and now we can personalize email at scale using Lasso AI.
Yep.
So that's what we're bringing to people for the first time, is not only the research finding capability, but also the personalization at scale. And this is our first release of the product. I mean, how quick things are moving now. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised by next quarter we can have language models built for each client. It's just amazing the speed at which this is happening. So a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, there's no doubt that our world will have completely changed in terms of how salespeople prospect using AI.
Because the next question was, just because I'm conscious of time as well, is I wanted to go to, so within the next 6 months, what should salespeople be doing in terms of using AI for top of funnel activity? And I think that speaks to Lasso. Just describe, and we might kind of finish on this and then just wrap up. Describe what made you, first of all, what is Lasso? And then secondly, what was the customer need that you saw? And then kind of what have you built?
Yeah, so I was spending 7 figures a year on contact data.
And by the way, to the audience, Derek, this is not sponsored. I've not bought Lasso. I'm not on the affiliate system for Lasso. It's just interesting. So it's not a product push. This is genuinely, it's brand new. You're about to launch it, I think. So yeah, sorry, tell your story.
Yeah, so we have a best-in-class sales development team. We follow frameworks and models and playbooks that drive tons of revenue for our clients. We're often driving several thousand% ROI per year, many case studies a year. And so if you develop the most, say, highest performing sales development team, you're still going to have the same problem that I had, which is why we built Lasso, is finding net new, right? Because humans, there's this theory, the Dunbar theory is that humans can only maintain 150 relationships in all of our life.
Right.
So cognitively, we're not built for maintaining, going back to, people buy from people,
Yep.
right? We're not capable cognitively of maintaining those relationships for a large addressable market. So if you have 1,000 companies, 10,000 companies that you're selling to, the human brain is not built for maintaining those types of relationships. So you see CRMs, right? Like, and we have these things that help us and task managers. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we wanted to build something that just said, hey, show me the people that I'm missing, contacts that I don't have, and exclude the ones that I already do. Right. So it's this function of just finding net new. That's what we call it internally. How do we do that? So programmatically, we built this piece of AI where you can exclude existing contacts and opportunities at the company level and just go find net new. So you feed it your ICP, ideal customer profile type, and it could be just a name of named accounts. So if you're targeting, here's my list of accounts, here's my contacts that I have, who am I missing, right? And this is the cognitive gap analysis that we currently don't have. So it's 100% additive to any team because you're finding literally what you're missing.
Yep.
And then we didn't stop there. We also built GPT into it, and we started training GPT before we switched to our own language model. But so that we could do a single umbrella prompt that has our best practices, why you, why now, personalization in the very first 7 to 10 messages are personalized for that person, their function, their role.
Yep.
Why I'm reaching out to you. Here's some social proof about what we do, like why you should trust me. And here's a conversation we want to have. And that is a format thematically. When you apply it to AI can look at all kinds of different attributes about the person. Hey, they recently posted about this, which is what we're writing about. The company recently raised capital. The company recently filed for IPO. The company's earnings report recently said this, and this person's in charge of this role in this job department. We should highlight that in our message. Like, hey, based on the earnings report that came out, and so ultimately, we're just solving the problem that every salesperson has in terms of finding net new, right? And any salesperson today that's going to go through any data set that's out there and manually go through and scour for opportunities and try to remember who they have or haven't contacted.
Yep.
It's not a human game. That is a machine game to help you, right? And so by enabling humans to find what they're missing, that's what we built Lasso for. And we're pre-launch right now, meaning that we're bringing on sales folks, users, and companies to test Lasso. And so far it's going really well. And we plan to do a more public launch in Q2.
Very good. What kind of feedback, just out of interest, are you getting from people? What are they seeing where they're going, that's different, that's helpful?
I think the most interesting one is they're finding contacts that they didn't realize existed.
Right.
So they've been working this account for months or years, and they didn't know that there's this person's with this name and job title that matches all of their buyer characteristics, and they've been talking to a blocker this entire time.
Right.
They didn't realize, they thought they were talking to the decision maker, and then they find someone that titles or opportunities that show that maybe they're talking to the wrong person. Yep. Those are the first aha moments we see. And that's at the contact level. And that's on named accounts where it's like, oh, I didn't realize that they had a CMO or that their CMO had left, right? But at the company level, we have one client that we worked with them on doing some gap analysis, and they had this characteristics. It's a big region that they target, but they thought, our data is really good. We buy best in class data sets. Here they are, boom, boom, boom. So go ahead and do a gap analysis at the account level and tell us how many companies we're missing in our CRM. So we said, okay, sure. And they thought, you're probably going to find 100, 150. We're really good about turning over every rock in our market. That's what they told us. We found 16,000 companies that matched their ICP that wasn't in their CRM, and they almost fell out of their chairs when we showed them the data.
Right.
and then we showed them these stories of and examples of accounts. They were like the best fit ever for them. It's like, why haven't you contacted them? They're like, you have to be kidding me. These people just raised $10 million. They're in our backyard. We can actually see them from our office. Right. And we had no idea. That they weren't in our CRM. We thought someone was working them.
Yeah.
Like CROs that drive down the road each day and they see these billboards of advertising in their region. And they're like, oh, where are we on these accounts? And they find out we haven't even engaged them. Right?
Exactly.
So finding what you're missing using machines is, there's a fantastic game to play there, especially for sales folks, because, it's 100% additive. It's find what you're missing. And it's something that we love to play.
And it sounds like, Derek, what you're doing is you're helping salespeople find what they're missing and then personalize and customize the outreach to those organizations and people.
Yep. And the vision is, instead of having a phone book and having to look through and find, who have I not called or who I need to call, we just want the phone book to tell us, here's who you need to contact today and here's what you need to say.
Exactly. Yeah. And these people should be on your top of your list today because something happened in the press or they wrote about something, and in your 2 hours outreach that morning, that's what you should be saying, and that's who you should be saying it to. Derek, it's been a pleasure. It's been a real pleasure. And it's been entertaining and enlightening at the same time.
Thanks, Mike, for having me.
So, Derek, where can people find out more about you? What do you want them to do next who are listening?
Well, check out Lasso AI. You can find me through Lasso. You can also find me through Demand Inc., which is my core service that we help companies in terms of top of funnel acceleration as a managed service. That's demandinc.co, demandinc.co. Either of those, routes, you'll find me. But we're here to help salespeople be more efficient, and we believe in human in the loop. We believe that people buy from people, and so we're building all the machinery and the systems and the processes to help facilitate that meeting, to help put salespeople in front of more people.
Yeah.
I'm also on LinkedIn too, so
perfect.
I'd love to hear feedback. If anyone listening wants to contact me, I'm available on LinkedIn and or through my companies.
Very good. Derek, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks ever so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast series with your host, Mike Lander. Please subscribe so that you'll catch all the next episodes.